have to applaud after I'm finished, because you're going to say, that was enough. Thank you so much for coming.
Good evening. My name is Mimi Marcus, and I'm president of Hillel at Saginaw Valley State University. Hillel strives on building dynamic and vibrant Jewish communities and creating a Jewish culture on different campuses all across the world. Tonight, and especially during the month of Holocaust Remembrance, this task of introducing our guests of honors is a great privilege. I know this topic is very difficult, but the fact that we get the opportunity to hear the experience of such heroes is inspiring. I feel elated to introduce two individuals to everyone tonight. First, I'd like to introduce SVSU's own Professor Anna Dadles here in the front row. She has written numerous texts, like In Times of War, growing up during the Nazi occupation and its aftermath, Journey from Innocence, and many more. She has a different experience than our speaker, but hers is worth remembering and sharing. She grew up in a Polish family. Her father was arrested and later murdered by the Soviet police. After her father's arrest, Dr. Dadles and her mother were deported for life, along with more than 1 million other women and children, where mass starvation reigned. This mass movement happened during the almost 2-year-long relationship between Hitler and Stalin, starting from their joint invasion of Poland when the Germans invaded the Soviet Union. Stalin then gave the Poles the ability to leave and head to Iran. If you're interested in hearing more about her story or learning more about her text, we actually have a display all the way on the left, and you can check that out after our lecture. Tonight, we will be hearing Martin Lowenberg's experience. Mr. Lowenberg was born 5 years before Adolf Hitler came into power. When he was 15 years old, he was separated from his family and taken to the Kaiserwald concentration camp. Mr. Lowenberg now lives in Southfield and is featured in the book Living Witnesses, Triumph Over Tragedy by photographer Monty Must. He visits the Holocaust Center every Wednesday to share his story. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Lowenberg to the stage.
I'm not used to this, really. But I want to thank you so very, very much for coming. I'm speechless, believe it or not, even though I'm supposed to speak. Because of the wonderful turnout that we have. And I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight, really. I know for sure that you won't regret it, because this is a subject that has been close to me for almost as long as I've been living, because it started when I was 5 years old, and it ended, by the way. The captivity actually, it ended in captivity, actually, when I was 17. Yes, 12 long years. I've suffered, I've been abused, I've been tortured, and just let your imagination go wild. Even though, thank God, I was never in Auschwitz, and there the worst happened, because over 1 million people were burned and were gassed. This morning, when I picked up the Wall Street Journal, and there was a picture right on the front page of somebody who was a guard in Auschwitz. And he was part of it, who selected the people for work and for death. The man is now 93 years old. He's being charged on 300 counts. Think about that. If you pick up if you have a chance, and pick up the Wall Street Journal today, you can read about that. Where was he for 70 years? He was a free man, and he was just living the life that anybody else was enjoying. But he also enjoyed selecting the people and killing the people, almost by the millions, which is unbelievable. Yes, that was part of the Holocaust. And what does the word Holocaust really mean? What is the meaning of that word? It means total burning. Never ever in the history of mankind has there been an event so large and so unbelievable where 6 million Jewish people were killed and 5 million non-Jewish people. But what was worse of all, among them were 1.5 million beautiful children who would have had a wonderful future, who could have taught, who could have done anything, but their lives were snuffed out. They had no chance to go to school. They had no chance to live, to enjoy life. They had no chance, period. But their lives were destroyed. They were killed. Yes, among them were 2 little brothers of mine, twins that were 9 years old, and they were killed. How or what happened, I don't know, and I will never know. It'll always be a mystery to me. But I only hope that they were killed with my parents in the gas chambers and the ovens. Because otherwise, there was somebody there, a butcher, whose name was Dr. Joseph Mengele. Who did life experiments on beautiful children, on beautiful twins. Give me the twins, I'll take good care of them. I love twins. Yes, he sure did. He did the worst that you could not even imagine what he did. The infamous Dr. Joseph Mengele, who killed over 300 twins. Imagine that. There were many other doctors. They also did experiments like that. But he was the worst of all. He was the butcher of Auschwitz. And they also called him the angel of death. We should never ever forget his name, what he has done. Yes, and what so many others did. Day in, day out, it happened. And the torture and the abuse, it happened. But we still got up in the morning even if we didn't want to. And we had to. Because it was another day, but we thought maybe today would be that day. And for many, many people, for 11 million people or more, that beautiful day never ever came. Yes, it happened. And it started in 1933, when Hitler came to power. And who was he? People liked what he had to say, because it was right after the Depression in Germany, and here came somebody from Austria, and he was promising people what he was going to do. And what did he do? Yes, he had so many people following him. And they did all that act. Yes. There are many, many places. And just in the past 2 weeks, there were many stories. And one was about a women's camp, which was called Ravensbrück. And that was also in the Wall Street Journal. There were many, many, all these camps. There were hundreds of camps. And there were hundreds of millions of people suffered there, and their lives were destroyed. These were normal people. These were good people. These were decent people. These were people who built communities like we are doing here in this great country, the greatest country in the world. And we help build these communities. We don't destroy them, and we don't destroy people. We like to help each other. And that's our aim. That's why we are alive. Yes. And I appreciate it. And I thank all of you for coming here tonight. Because we don't ever want to forget the Holocaust. Because we know the meaning of the word. And what caused it. Why? You must excuse me. When I speak loud, even my daughters say, "Why are you so serious when you speak?" Because it is in me, and I cannot help it. And I speak constantly, and I don't get thousands and thousands of dollars because I don't want it. This is my type of work. And I like to spread the word. But how can anybody express himself quietly, without feeling? Because especially when you know what happened. And what happened in a lifetime. Yes. 70 years ago, we were liberated. And it still seems like yesterday. But why did it start? And where did I come from? I was born in this village. And it's a beautiful village in Germany. We enjoyed it. And we enjoyed it for many, many years. like any little village or like any city, it is very enjoyable. It's the people inside that made it so bad. We don't want the Jews. Get rid of them. Vanish. And they call us even drop dead. Yes. There's a tree in that village, and that I was there several years, for several years. 2 years ago was the last time I was there. But that tree was still blooming. It's over 1,000 years old. We used to sit there. We used to play there. But we don't anymore. The tree is still there. Because we were chased out. We don't want you. My grandparents, they were born there. And they're still buried there at the Jewish cemetery. My parents, they were also born there. But they're not buried there. Unfortunately, their ashes are scattered around in Auschwitz. And every time I say that, believe me, it does hurt. Even though I say it over and over again. And I speak any other time. Because how can anybody think that parents were burned? It hurts. And that's when I became an orphan at the age of 15. And I didn't have anybody anymore. Didn't have any more, nobody to guide me. No more parents. A lot of people think that there were only a few camps all over Europe. But this article was in the New York Times 2 years ago in March. There were hundreds of these camps, as I mentioned before. And imagine how many people were incarcerated there. Suffered, died, tortured. Yes, and that's what happened. Hitler came to power on January the 30th of 1933. These were young people in our community, and they belonged to a soccer club. It was called Maccabi. That little boy, that's me, when I was 5 years old. And here's my sister Eva, when she was 10. Thank God Eva is still alive. And I spoke to her before, and I speak to her every day. She lives in New York. Unfortunately, her mind is not what it should be. But it does happen to many, many older people. These people, nobody wanted to play against them anymore. We don't want to play against those Jews. So therefore, they didn't play anymore after Hitler came to power. But so much was taken away from us. We were no longer citizens. They took our books and burned them in the middle of the streets. We didn't have any more telephone. And of course we couldn't have any more communication. Even though we already had a telephone. Since 1903, we had telephone number 2. My great-grandparents. But after that, nothing anymore. everything developed so fast, and the hate developed so fast. Yes, hate is the worst word. And I replace it with so many other words. So many words with the same connotation. And when I speak to young people in schools, I try to teach them what hate really means. Because people will say, I hate you. But they don't know what it means. Because for each letter, with the same connotation, you can make words out of it. Horror, humility, harassment, harm, hunger, for the H. For the A, atrocities, anger, awful, abolishment, and so on. And I try to tell them, this is what hate means. And then I will take the letter T, torture, torment, terror, trauma, and so on. Then we'll take the last letter. And the last letter is the worst. Is the E. And people don't realize it. Execute, exterminate, evil. And you put that D in front of the word evil, and you get the devil. And I lived with that devil for 12 long years. I saw the devil. But I also explained to you before who was the biggest devil. And that was Mengele. Who can ever forget him, what he did to beautiful children? Tried to join them together again so they would look like twins. Cut out the organs, cut out the limbs, gouge out the eyes, do everything, the worst that anybody can imagine. And that's the devil, believe it or not. He was supposed to heal people, but he enjoyed to do the rest. The opposite. There was a boy sitting in the barn, farmhands, and this was on March the 15th of 1933. Only a month and a half after Hitler came to power. Somebody came along here. I'll buy you beer, but you're going to destroy the Jews' house. And that's exactly what they did. They burned down our house that night of March 15th, and we lost everything. And whatever was not destroyed in the fire, they looted. That's how people reacted. And reacted with hate. And for what? Because people did not realize if it would have happened to them, I wonder what they would have said. But Hitler told us to do that, and so they did it. Fortunately, we had some good friends. And over the years, we did make good friends. Naturally, many years. Helped us rebuild again. And we built that house. And I was the youngest of 5 children at the time, but my older siblings were already in the early 20s. They were born in 1913 and 1914. Sister and a brother. You damn Jew. Drop that, you Jew. Vanish. And they said, there is no future for us when we're being called those names. And so that's exactly what they did. Jews go to Palestine, and they were lucky enough to get into Palestine. Whereas for all of us, it was impossible. Because you just couldn't get out. You couldn't go to the and buy a ticket at the airlines, or you couldn't just go anywhere. It was impossible, and especially to the United States. Ask your ancestors, how did they ever come here? Would be very interesting to find out. Your grandparents, your parents, hopefully your great-grandparents. But somebody definitely is going to tell you, yes, we could not live in our country anymore. We had to come here, and we came to the best country in the world. And they certainly did. And look at what happened to every one of you. You flourished. You had a wonderful life, and you have a wonderful life. And you're being left alone. Because we see today, as we listen to the news, we find it from all over, at different places. And don't think the hate for Jews has stopped. No, it is still very visible, unfortunately. And in Europe, it's very much alive again. Why? And even in isolated areas and anywhere else, the hate for the Jews. Those are the ones that you hate most. Yes. And why? Are we really that bad? No. Believe me. Everybody wants to live and makes a good living. And we work hard for it. And that's why you're here. Why are you here? Right now, in this place? Because we want to learn and we want to earn. We want to earn those diplomas so we can have a wonderful life. And that's what we're aiming for. And everybody can have that chance. Because here we can have it. In some other areas, some people don't want us to learn and earn. So look at how lucky we are. Shortly after we moved into that house in 1934, my mother gave birth to twin boys. And on the left is Fritz, which is a German name, and Kurt, which is a German name. Eva was biblical name, and here's Margaret, and she was born in 1920. There were no other children from 1914 until 1920 in our family. Why? Because my father was in the war, fighting for Germany for 4 years. He was an officer. But in 1938, in the pogrom in Germany, when they burned down the synagogues and destroyed the people's stores and everything else. I'll come to that a little later. Yes. That's what happened. This is the house, the way it is today. Of course, it doesn't belong to us. And that was our warehouse. And we were supplying the farmers with their needs. But my father couldn't use the warehouse anymore. Very shortly after we built, nobody would buy from us anymore. And that's what happened. And here what happened, as I said, Hitler came to power on January the 30th of 1933. This is April the 7th of 1933. They already had announcements in the newspapers. What they want to do with the Jews. We're going to have a meeting about those Jews. And what did they call us? They called us the Jewish bloodsuckers, the liars, the thieves. We're not those type of people. This is what happened. And that was only in the beginning. Here, in another village, they wanted to build a gallows and hang the Jewish teacher from it. And there were all these signs already. We were no longer allowed to sit on a park bench because that was for Aryans only. That's what they called the Christian German people. And even a Mercedes-Benz dealer had a sign out. It says, "Juden are not wanted here." Germans, beware, don't buy from Jews. And here they stand in front of the store. And this was an American company, and I know many, many of you people have been there years ago at Woolworth and enjoyed buying there, and that was not a Jewish company. But they also had outlets in Germany, and here they stand in front of it, and they were boycotting it. They had these demonstrations twice a week, and who spoke? It was Hitler. Spoke over loudspeakers because people did not have radios. So naturally, everything was over loudspeaker. And so was the hate. And it was always about the Jews. They were saluting him like they did in Caesar's time. Hail Caesar. Well, he liked it, and he wanted to be saluted the same way Heil Hitler. And here is his youth. And these young people were destructive. Compare them to Boys Club of America, who are constructive, and that's the difference. This was the school that I was in. That was my public school. It was not a big school. But what happened there was big enough. Because the teacher that I had used to come in his uniform to school. But here it was on April the 20th of 1936, and he wanted to celebrate Hitler's birthday, and not with refreshments or anything like that. He invited all the students into our classroom, and he singled me out, and he says, "Come up here." And naturally, when the teacher wants you to come up, you come up. But he accused me of having stuck out my tongue at Hitler's picture, which was hanging in the front of the classroom. And he says, "You dare, how dare you insult our Führer, our leader?" And I didn't know what he meant. I saw you when you stuck out your tongue. What could I do? So he called up 4 older boys from the back who had just joined, and he told them to come up, and he beat me up. They beat me up so badly. They kicked me, they spat in my face, and they punched me, and I was on the floor crying, needless to say. There were 5 Jewish students over here, including Eva was here too. They were standing on the side. But on this side, the teacher was standing there now, holding up a board. And that board was covered with thumbtacks and nails. He came over and he put that down on his chair, picked me up from the floor, and pushed me right on top of it. And he says, "Maybe now you learned your lesson. Never to insult our leader again, our Führer." When I was in Germany, and people saw that, and they said, "Martin, we remember that. We remember when that happened." And they told me what the teacher's name was, and I had even forgotten it. But I will never ever forget it again. Yes, that's how I was treated. That was me. And then my parents had to send me away right after that particular incident. They sent me away about 150 miles from home. And I was completely separated from my family. Because I could no longer attend school. Eva was sent to Frankfurt, where she went to another school, and then Margaret was working for a family, taking care of children. She was already a little bit older. So we were already separated in a way. But I could not come home for 2 years, except once. This was the school that I was in. That was a Jewish school in a town called Bad Nauheim. And here on top were the teachers and the counselors. The floor below that was the girls' floor. This was the boys' floor, and underneath were the classrooms. But we were left alone, and we learned. But unfortunately, we did not have our families with us. And we were very homesick, and they didn't have us either. So we couldn't even come home. We were not allowed to travel anymore. This, by the way, is a school today, and it was completely refurbished, and it is also it's a school for underprivileged children, German children. But it's called the Sophie Scholl School. If we have time, I will explain that later. We could only write postcards home and also receive them. And we did that once a week. And here we are, little children. And we were so homesick, and we cried many, many days and many nights because we didn't have our families, our parents, our brothers, our sisters. That's me right over there, when I was 9 years old. Such was life. And here is a picture, that the last family picture that was ever taken. Here's Margaret, who came also home because she was she was an au pair. She was taking care of children for a family, and that particular family had a chance to emigrate to the United States. And of course she asked him if she wants to come along. And naturally they agreed, and they put her name on their affidavit, and my father paid for all the expenses. Because that time it was very expensive to go someplace, especially the United States, because you had to be at least on the ship for about 10 to 14 days. And that's very expensive. Here's Eva, she was 14, I was 9 years old, and the twins were 3 years old. They were born in 1934, this was 1937. And here my parents. And that, as I said, was the last family picture that was ever taken. Yes, Germany used to be a wonderful country. And we had wonderful synagogues. Some of you may say churches, but we call them synagogues. And they look beautiful, especially on holidays. And this was in Frankfurt, and it was specially decorated for a special holiday, which is very close to Pentecost, and right now in spring. And it was decorated with flowers and garlands and everything else. They look beautiful. And even on Hanukkah, the rabbi used to go up and he light the candles, because we light a candle for every night, for a total of 8 days that we celebrate. And we also give gifts. The children are looking forward, because they also get gifts, because the Christian children get their gifts So the Jewish children have to get their gifts as well, and here they get it for every week, for every night. And here you can see the candle, or the rabbi went up and he lit one candle every night. And it used to be also, it still is a wonderful holiday. This was the outside of the synagogue. This was in Frankfurt. All those synagogues were beautiful, gorgeous structures. But what happened on November the 9th of 1938, while I was sitting in the classroom and trying to learn, suddenly stones and rocks came flying through the windows. 3 of my fellow classmates were hurt so badly from the glass and from the stones, and of course the blood was running down. And the teacher dismissed the class immediately and said, run home as fast as you can. And that day I'll never ever forget, November the 9th of 1938. There was so much destruction all over Germany. They killed close to 100 people. To be exact, they say 91 people were killed all over Germany and even Austria. All the synagogues were burning. Over 1,400 synagogues. All over Germany and even Austria. They were in flames and nobody would say anything. Let them burn, they said, but be sure and protect the non-Jewish properties. And that's what they did. And we were living in a very small apartment by now, because we could no longer live in our little village, because they wanted all the Jews to be as close together, living as close together as possible in communities. And we had to move that summer. Instead of living in a house like we used to, we had to live in a very small apartment. Few days after the fire, this was our synagogue. And it was now, they're tearing it apart. That's the end. We have no more synagogues. And it was very difficult even to come together and to pray amongst other men. Because, by the way, this was our school, and it's now an apartment building, and here is the where the synagogue was. This is now a parking lot. But the reason we could no longer get together with the men, our daily prayers suddenly stopped as a group, because the next morning, somebody came up the stairs. It was a Nazi soldier and a policeman, and pounded on our door. Needless to say, my father opened the door. I stood right next to him, and he was constantly going to me like that. I'll never forget that. Policeman says, "Come with us." My father said, "What for?" "I haven't done anything." And the policeman insisted, "Come with us." I think you could almost hear that, the way he was yelling anywhere. They arrested every Jewish man from the age of 16 up to the age of 60, all over Germany and Austria, which was already annexed with Germany by now. Every Jewish man. There were 3 concentration camps already in existence. The first one was called Dachau. Many of you might have heard of it. Near Munich. The second one was called Sachsenhausen, where they had already done, since 1933, experiments. Surgery, and did the worst on people that are physically and mentally handicapped, and also and many others. But this is Buchenwald, which was built the end of 1937, and they took the men right here. Thousands and thousands of men from all over Germany came here, and as soon as they came in, their heads were shaved. Simply because they were Jews. My father was arrested on the 12th of November, and this is the 14th, on the 14th of December, he was finally released. And why was he there? Because he was a Jew. He was one of the fortunate ones to be there for 1 month, whereas others stayed there for as long as a year, and some never ever came back to their families. Yes, and this was not yet the Holocaust. It just started. It just started with this, where there were killings of many people. My father, after he came out from Buchenwald, and that's right here, that's him. They gave him pick and shovel, and they dug, and they dug. Why? Because they had to build trenches, because the war was imminent. And they wanted to make sure that the German people would be safe and would not be hurt when the British planes came over. And that's why they needed these trenches. But other people, we didn't have any IDs. We were no longer citizens. No citizenship papers, nothing. But they wanted to have some kind of identification. So if they have a chance to get out of the country, at least they can prove, they can show it. Oh yes. So in 1939, they gave us a new identification. And for men, from now on, they added a middle name of Israel, and for women, they gave them a middle name of Sarah. So every Jewish woman had now the middle name of Sarah, and the men had the middle name of Israel. And this happened to everybody, and this is my birth certificate, as a matter of fact, and this is what they added on February the 9th of 1939, but it was not rescinded until March of 1949. The war was over in 1946. But they still left that. Because it was Germany, it was a law. Well, thank God they took that off. And I have my regular name again. Here they are. These were the identification cards. Ursula, Sarah, and then with a big J, Jew. And then here, Herbert, Israel, Nussbaum, and with the J, Jew. Oh yes. Many of you know that at the age of 13, we are being confirmed. And this was supposed to be my bar mitzvah, and that's what we called it. But we didn't have a party. Usually people have a party, they celebrate, and so on. But we did not have a party. We were glad to have food, which somebody gave to us. And it was all vegetables, because we could no longer have meat, or we could no longer have fish. So here, this was my celebration on that particular Saturday, where I read my portion in the Bible, and that was it. And here's Fritz and Kurt. They were supposed to go to for the first time to school, but they were 6 years old, and of course they had to take a picture. But my mother could no longer buy clothes either. Go away, you Jew. We don't have it. So what did my mother do? She took a sheet and she sewed the shirts, and she had an overcoat, and she made the shorts from that. And she also knitted the socks. Yes. At least so we look decent. Then in 1941, they gave us this. We call it the Judenstern, the Jewish star. Yes, and we had to wear that badge. And any of our outer clothing, jackets or coats, and we had to wear that. But we could no longer go outside, because they would recognize us immediately and throw stones and rocks and rotten tomatoes and anything that they could find, even raw eggs, in our faces. How did we live? Luckily, we had some friends, some Christian friends, who came to us in the middle of the night and brought us vegetables or whatever we could use. Because we could no longer go out, especially not with this. Because immediately we were harassed. Our lives were not the same anymore. Then in 1941, the day of Pearl Harbor, which happened to be on December the 7th of 1941, this was on December the 8th of 1941. Prior to that, we were given notice that we're going to be resettled and to pack a small suitcase just with your most necessary things, and be sure to take enough food for 2 days. And you're going to be sent away from here because it's not going to be, so you're not going to be bothered like that anymore. People packed suitcases, which was taken away. And we were supposed to take everything and put it in boxes that we had in our apartment, and make sure that that they said when you get it back, so you will identify everything again. But we never ever got anything back again. We even had to deposit our valuables in a bank, and they told us, we will keep it for you for safekeeping. My father and I, that morning of December the 5th, 1941, we went there, and they told us, we'll keep it for you for safekeeping, so when you come back, you'll get it all back again. That much. Nothing. Yes. And believe me, what I'm telling you is exactly the way it happened and how it happened. Some older people were taken to the train station that morning of December the 8th, and here, 2 hours later, we arrived in the capital city of our state. It was called Kassel. And that afternoon, people had come from all over the state, and here we're waiting for the trains to come, and naturally we're waiting for for passenger trains. No. Boxcars and cattle cars. And they shoved us in there and they put us in there. And that reminds me also to let you know that we have a boxcar that came from Germany in Farmington, Michigan. It's an Orchard Lake Road, just north of 12 Mile Road. And it would be a wonderful idea to come and visit that Holocaust Center. Whenever you have a chance, try to go there. We're open every single day except Saturdays. And there is a public tour always at 1 o'clock. If you want to, you can always call to make sure. But there are always tours there. There's a docent who will take you through the Holocaust Center, and then also for half an hour afterwards, or 45 minutes, the survivor will speak to you. But it would really be a good time spent. It would be worthwhile. But you will see a car that's sitting right in the middle, almost in the at the entrance of the center, that has been refurbished, and of course it came from Germany. So this is how people came in, and of course this one is Kassel. It's marked like that. And then we were taken from here that afternoon. We were for 4 days and 4 nights. We were right inside in that car, and we young people, I was 13 years old, and we were standing like this until we came to Riga, Latvia, which was all the way up north. And the further north we went, the colder it got. It was bitter cold when we arrived. This is to show you the distance on a European map. And it was far. And it was getting colder and colder as we went up there. And then we had to get out. Men, women, children, babies. And there were many sick people, needless to say, after 4 days and 4 nights. So they said, anybody that cannot walk, we will take you there by truck or by bus. And you'll see your families later. But what did they mean by later? When you get killed, you'll see them up in heaven. And that means later. We did not understand that either. Because we didn't think that people could be like that and would be like that. But they were. We had to walk for 5 miles. 5 long miles until we came to the ghetto, and it was snowing, it was bitter cold, and it was icy. Until we came to the ghetto. And by the way, this picture of the ghetto was taken much later. There were these signs, and they said, any person who will try to cross the fence or make contact with anyone through the fence will be shot without notice. And the sign, one side says in German, and the other one was in Latvian, which we did not know. The language we did not know. We found out. And then here are the guards. And they were stationed all around the ghetto, which was quite a large place, because people came from all over Germany. From Berlin, from Stuttgart, from from Frankfurt, from all over. And then finally it filled up. And where are we going to put the Jews now? So what they did is take them right from the train station, from the freight station, and they took them into the forest and they killed them. In 2002, they built this monument, and they poured in these stones to show what it looked like when the people were assembled there, and the machine guns were constantly going back and forth, and the people were killed by the thousands. Yes, that happened before the concentration camps, because they started to really build all the concentration camps after January the 20th of 1942, because there was a meeting in Berlin of about 14 high commands. There were doctors, there were lawyers, there were Nazi officials, and about 14 of them. And they met on Thursday before. But then on Sunday, they finally came down to business. The rest of the time they were drinking and they were eating and doing whatever and telling wonderful stories. But on that day, on that Sunday, they finally decided, now let's have a meeting. And the meeting was about the final solution. And what was the final solution? To kill every Jew on the face of the earth. Not just there, but they wanted to kill every Jew. And that was their aim. Yes. That place was called the Wannsee Conference. Wannsee. Because the river that ran right in front of that the villa was called the River One, and of course CSEA. So that was the Wannsee Conference. That's why, wherever they didn't have any room in the ghetto anymore, they were taken right there from the train station and killed immediately. Even before that, they killed the overflow, but here there were all the transfers. And even Christians were killed. Many, many Christians. Nobody raised a hand. Nobody said anything. And here, this is what we came to in the ghetto. And this is it says, this was after the massacre of the Latvian Jews, because there were Latvian Jewish people that had been rounded up when the Germans entered Latvia, and they put them all into this one section until November the 30th and December the 7th. We left on December the 8th in Germany. December the 7th. And they took everybody that was here. And they wanted to make sure that nobody was hiding, because that's why they threw out the furniture. And this is what happened. All of these Latvian Jewish people, close to 3,000, that were killed. They didn't care. When I saw that this morning about that man in the newspaper, I get the shivers. Why did they let that man live so long? And he's still alive. And he has an attorney that is defending him yet. This is only one, but look at how many hundreds of these killers did get. mind-boggling, believe it or not. In the morning, we had to go to work. And you can see, they're wearing the stars, that we had to go in the morning, but at least at night. And of course there was a soldier, and of course they were all the way around, constantly guarding us. In the evening, at least, when we came home, we were still together as a family. But we can't do that. We can't let these people still live together as a family. We were slaves. We worked so hard. And then a year and a half later, they took the women, able women, and they put them in a camp, in a slave camp. And they shaved their heads. And that's what they looked like. Yes. But a month later, they took everyone from the ghetto, from the age of 15 up to the age of 50. And whoever was under the age of 15 and over 50 was left behind, because they were not able to work. They were already so weak. And that's what happened. When I came into the concentration camp, which was called Kaiserwald. And of course, right away, I got the number. They gave me a number. They did not, these were the ones that they, with the needles that they gave in Auschwitz and Magalic. Those are the only two camps where they tattooed the people, where they burned their numbers in their arms or up here on the chest. For us, they did not do that. They gave us the patches, and they had the numbers right up there. But we got this uniform immediately. And we didn't have any more underwear. The only thing that we were able to keep were the shoes. And when they were out, well, we had to somehow improvise. Maybe we found a tire. Maybe we did whatever there was, sackcloth or whatever, and we bound our feet that way. But we didn't have any coats, and we did nothing in the wintertime. We froze. And our fingers, you can imagine. But we had to work. We were slaves. And here the women, they had to pull a railroad car, and this one over here on the side. Faster, come on, faster. And they had to run and do this. These are the bunks that we were housed in. By the way, many of you might have already, I'm sure, heard of you, Elie Wiesel, the famous writer and also a famous person, and that was him over here. He was not in our camp, but it so happens that this picture of these bunks were taken in Auschwitz where he was, and that was him, Elie Wiesel. And of course, when you see that man today, who won many, many awards, and who is very, very famous, yes, that's what he was that time. So you can imagine, we all were like skeletons. And here, in the morning we got a very watery soup, either made from potato skins or from maybe carrots, frozen carrots or whatever, rotten carrots, or even peas. And they made soup for us. And that we had in the morning and also in the evening. And at noon, they gave us a very thin slice of bread. That's all we got. And that's why we looked like this. But we held on, and we had to work. This is the barrack in Riga, and they wanted to destroy that as the Germans had to evacuate and leave, and before the Russians came, and they wanted to burn this down, the evidence. But no, there wasn't enough time, so they brought sacks of straw and hay in, and they wanted to burn it up. So that's why you see all those facts. On November the 2nd of 1943, they emptied the ghetto in Riga. And they took everyone that was still there, which included my parents and the twins. And they were put on a train. They liquidated the ghetto completely. And they took everybody here and sent it down to Auschwitz, Poland, all the way down. And of course, when they came to Auschwitz, I mentioned it before, my parents didn't have a chance, and unfortunately, the twins didn't either. They were too young, or my parents were too old. And anybody that was still there was killed. And that, this morning, when I read that, I could very well imagine about that man. Because he was helping in Auschwitz who was going to live and who was going to die. He was separating the people. Imagine. Oh no, I was ordered to do that. I would like to use a word, but forget it. Yes, but on that particular day, November the 2nd of 1943, unbeknown to me, but that's when I became an orphan, at the age of 15. We didn't know, in Riga or anywhere else, we did not know what was happening in any other camp. Anywhere. It was like a top secret, and nobody, because they were not transferred from one camp to the camp. Once we were in that camp, we were all in that camp. And that's why we never knew, and we never heard of any of the news. These were all the Jews that were killed all over Europe. Imagine that. How many unfortunate people. Later on, the small contingent of us was taken by ship back to Germany. And first we had to load the ship with empty ammunition shells. And then we arrived in Hamburg, in a very large prison and concentration camp. And we were here for about 5 weeks. And after that, we went on a death march for 4 days and 4 nights, and we were so weak already. We could hardly walk, but we did. Because we wanted to keep our strength, and as long as we can hold on, we did. Because we had hope. Maybe the next morning, maybe the next moment, we might be free. Maybe we're saved. We hope to. While many of them had the same hope. But many of them didn't make it. And you can see by their faces, and this is how we walked. And we started out over here in Hamburg in April of 1945. For 4 days and 4 nights, we had to walk. 4 days and 4 nights. And there were many people that died on the way, and they were also killed on the way, until we came all the way up to the most northern city in Germany called Kiel. And there we were in a concentration camp for 3 weeks. And every day we had to take the bricks from the destroyed buildings and factories and homes, and we had to clean those every day with our fingers, and you can imagine what our fingers endured. They were sore, they were rough, they were bleeding, but we had to do like this and make sure it was clear of water. Whoops. No? Anyway, and then from there we were taken to on May the 2nd of 1945. We were finally taken by trucks. Anybody here can fix this? Oh yeah, thank you. Get up. Okay. Now, that goes fast. Oh, yeah, more. Sorry, people. Okay, more. Okay. You're a good thing. Good student, good thing. The parents should be very proud of you. Anyway, many of our people were put on these trucks. It was marked with the Red Cross, but what they had done is took hoses and attached them to the tailpipe, and it went right inside, and the trucks were closed up. And needless to say, the people, as soon as the trucks went out a little bit, so far, the people inside were immediately killed. Fortunately for us, we were taken away in this type of truck, and there was still a German guard guarding us. And this was the week before the war was over. And here, we were taken first to Denmark and then to Sweden, where we were finally liberated. How were we liberated? There was, at the time, the head of the Red Cross, whose name was Count Bernadette, and some Jewish men went to Hitler, because Hitler was already dead at that time. And Hitler was in command. And they said, we have 300 Jews. Would you release them? They didn't know exactly the amount, but they just said, we have 300 Jews. Would you release them? And he says, I will not release any Jew because of the final solution that every Jew must be killed. Even then. And they were going to pay him lots of money. Very quickly, one of them said, but there were also 300 Polish women, Christian women. Would you release those? Yes, I'll release them. I'll release them. Give me the money. Because he wanted to escape into South America, which he did not, because he was also caught. And because of that, we were finally liberated and taken into Sweden. And first, we were in a quarantine for several weeks, and then for 9 months in rehabilitation centers. And a year later, Eva and I, we came here to this wonderful, great country in the world. The land of the free and the home of the brave, believe me. But even we had not been together either. And so happened, we were finally reunited again in Sweden. So that's how we came here to America. Okay? I'll be open for questions. And anybody that has one, please don't be bashful, don't hesitate. But I want to thank you so very, very much for being so Thank you. I'm not used to this. Please. But for being so wonderful and listening what can happen to people. And whatever we can do to help those in need, we should definitely try to speak up and try to help as much as we can, because we know it is going on again all over the world, where people are being humiliated and killed, and their lives are taken away from them, and their families are taken away from them. So please, if you can be part of that to save anybody, and remember to teach others, please, not to hate. It's the worst word. Thank you so very much, and I want to thank Mimi for arranging this wonderful, wonderful audience. Really, she has done a fabulous job. And of course, we have to thank her father and family. Really. But,
yeah, Mimi! Thank you for sharing your story, Mr. Lowenberg. You are a true inspiration to all of us. Let's give him another round of applause. There are days when humanity gives me unending hope and fills my heart. And there are days when we treat one another horribly, and it gives me a gut punch to the soul. This month, we remember some of our darkest darkness. When hearing these experiences or researching the history of this event, it saddens me. The mothers, the sons, the fathers, the daughters, and the siblings. And I ask, why? Why we look at our fellow man, people made of the same flesh, blood, and beating hearts, and we see the other. Why definitions and distinctions that don't serve our collective humanity become warped reasons to murder one another, to cause suffering that lives on for generations. For what? This month may be about history, but sadly we're not far from this. We still turn a blind eye to suffering and cruelty in the world. We allow difference to become breeding grounds for hatred rather than beautiful opportunities to learn. But somehow, it feels like, and I hope that the tide is turning. More and more young people are using their voices to demand change, fairness, and equality. We want to see an end to bigotry, fear, and intolerance. We want peace, and we see unity, and we see one world. We see that we are global citizens. We see another's face, and we want to know the person behind it. My deepest hope is that this feeling can be our future, that the stains in our history can ensure that we will never, ever go back there, that we will never forget. Let the truth of the past hurt your heart, but then defend a better future and justice with all of your might. Your voices matter, so please use them well. So right now we're going to go into questions and answers, and we have Hillel members around in our audience with microphones. So if you have a question, you can just raise your hand.
Are you going to answer?
No, you're going to answer.
I was just curious, you have, you have so many photos of your family. How do you currently have those? Do you find them, or?
But my additional family, my sister, a brother from Palestine, came over here to this country in 1951. Okay, but how did I find them? When we were in Sweden, in the beginning, there were volunteers that came around and wanted to get as much information from anybody if they have any family before they were incarcerated. If they had any family anywhere in the world, and they were going to contact them. And of course, at that time, there was no email, there was no well, not everybody had a telephone, but there was something that was called Western Union of Telegram, and they immediately sent telegrams wherever there was a threat of relationship with anybody or so forth, and they contacted them right away. And of course, within hours, they already had an answer. There is somebody living in Buenos Aires, or there's somebody living in Tel Aviv, like my sister who had been living in Tel Aviv, and I knew she was in Tel Aviv because my mother used to send letters there, and occasionally she did get them. At other times, the postal department confiscated it or censored it. Okay, but I knew there was an. So my sister had moved from the residence that I remembered, but a neighbor knew where she was living now. So she contacted right away my sister, and of course she knew. Then, in turn, my brother was in the Jewish British Brigade stationed in Italy. So my sister also contacted my brother, which was much easier, and of course she contacted my sister in New York. So they right away knew that Eva and I were safe. See, so this is how it went about. But with other families, the same way. You see, like people wrote back, "My home is your home. Don't ever forget it. Wherever you are, come over. We want you." And of course, they had to send them money. They had to send them affidavits and so forth because we did not have anything. You see. Okay, you're welcome.
I'm just wondering.
Where we were. Well, right there. Okay. Sorry, lady. Oh, by the way, this is my wife. Get up. How many years? Next month, the 15th of May, we're married for 55 years. When I was taken away, the last time I saw my twin brothers was on that day when I was taken away to the concentration camp, which was the beginning of August of 1943. Okay. That's when I was taken into Kaiserwald, into the concentration camp. Yeah, one of 5 different concentration camps. Okay? Yes. Eva? Which one? The one? Which one? Margaret is in California, and she's 94 years old. And I spoke to her yesterday, and she was telling me that her grandson, and of course now I found out this weekend, her grandson was just confirmed. He was just what they call bar mitzvah, and they found it, and I have it on my got by email how they were celebrated and so forth. And she is so happy. She's so elated. Yes, at the age of 94, I should have that joy. Okay, that's what happened. And of course, I have a lot of joy also. My wife and I, as you found out, we are married for 55 years. We have 3 wonderful daughters, and one lives in Oak Park, Michigan, and the other one, and the other 2, one lives in West Hempstead, Long Island, and the youngest one lives in Teaneck, New Jersey. The one in Oak Park has 5 wonderful children. The one in West Hempstead has also 5, and the one in Teaneck has 4. So we have 14 wonderful grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. But I must say one thing, that they're all college students. Every one of them are doctors already. No celebration, no faith, no prayers, no nothing. We could not perform anything. We could not even get to the next person and try to do a prayer together or something like that. All we were living on was hope and that to survive, and that was mainly our aim, because otherwise there was nothing there left what we used to have or what a normal person has. As far as faith, yes, we knew who we were. But yet again, many people, I will say that, many people gave up everything. There is no God. If there would be a God, He wouldn't let me suffer. He wouldn't let my family be killed. But it was not God, it was man that did this. Man chopped the heads off, man killed people, man did everything. The worst. But not God. God got, finally, we were liberated from all this. And that was, God had a hand in that. But not what was going on every day, what they were doing. That fellow's name, that fellow's picture, and the Wall Street Journal this morning does not get out of my head. Really, believe it or not, I'm very serious. And if you get to see that picture, you'll see the real Nazi. A young fellow like that. What he did. I mean, and now that he's sitting there at the age of 93. Really, it just hasn't escaped my mind yet. Because it's all back again. Yes?
We're going to have one last question right here in the front.
Hi. Well, should I be sorry about that or what? Okay, how did my wife and I, we had very close friends who got us together. And it was more or less a blind date, because they were they were the ones that introduced us, and we went out that Saturday night, and we were just, as a matter of fact, we went to an opera together, and we saw Love Hang, and that is a love story. And so therefore, we were, yes, if you ever want to see a beautiful opera and hear the gorgeous music in that opera by Puccini, then you would say, oh, that is a love story. And really, it was. So, there you are. Okay? So.
All right, well. Thank you again to Mr. Lowenberg and Professor Anna Dodles for being here tonight. I also wanted to thank all of our sponsors that helped us put on this event. So thank you to the Office of the President, the Office of Academic Affairs, Student Life, and Hillel Campus Alliance of Michigan. I hope this experience tonight touched your hearts as it did mine. And again, if you would like to view Anna Dodles' work, it's displayed over on the left, your right. And if you would like to learn more about our organization, Hillel, we have a display outside of these doors. If you would like to take any pictures with either one of our heroes tonight, we will be doing it up on the stage. And again, thank you for coming.